You're standing in a field 12,000 years ago. The sun is barely up, the grass is wet against your legs, you are hungry, and nobody has told you what to do today. No boss, no shift, no wage, no title, no Monday. Nobody is waiting for you to arrive. Nobody will notice if you don't. You will work today. Certainly. You will eat today. Probably. But you do not have a job. Nobody on Earth does. Not one person. Not anywhere. Work is older than we are. Ants work. Wolves work. Work is just energy spent to stay alive. A job is something else. A job is a slot with your name in it. So where did that come from? Who invented the job? Let's start with the strangest building on Earth. In 1995, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt began digging into a low hill in southeastern Turkey. Locals called it Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill. Schmidt found rings of carved stone pillars. Some stand over 5 meters tall. Some weigh close to 10 tons. Foxes, scorpions, vultures, snakes cut into the rock. The site is roughly 11,500 years old. That number should not be possible, because there are no farms here, no pottery, no metal, no city. The people who quarried those stones and dragged them up that hill were hunter-gatherers. So it looks like the first temple built by a civilization. It is actually the opposite. It is a temple built before civilization. Hundreds of people, coordinating, hauling 10-ton stones for years, which means organized labor never needed farms. It never needed wages. It needed a reason, but it still wasn't a job. In 1963, an anthropologist named Richard Lee moved to the Dobe area of the Kalahari, in what is now Botswana. He lived with the San, and he did something very simple. He counted hours. Every day for months, he recorded who left camp, who stayed, who came back with food. The answer was 2 to 3 hours a day. Call it 17 hours a week of getting food. Add toolmaking and housework, and you approach 40. But the actual hunting and gathering was 3 hours. The rest was talking, sleeping, visiting, sitting. In 1966, at a conference in Chicago, the anthropologist Marshall Solins gave this a name: the original Affluent Society. It sounds like poverty. It is actually leisure. And here's the thing. Nobody there had a title. A man hunted and made tools and told stories and minded children. He was not a hunter, he was a person who sometimes hunted. But that was about to break. Around 9,000 years ago, on a plain in central Turkey, thousands of people built a town with no streets. Çatalhöyük, dug by James Mellart in the 1960s, then by Ian Hodder from 1993. Mud brick houses packed wall to wall. You entered through a hole in the roof. You walked across the rooftops to get home. Estimates put the population between 3,000 and 8,000 people. Farming, herding, trade in obsidian. So here they are, the first jobs. Right? No. Because the houses are nearly identical. Nearly every house has an oven. Nearly every house has tools. Nearly every house has its own dead buried under the floor. No palace, no temple district, no workshop quarter. Thousands of people living together, farming, and still no bakers, no priests, no soldiers. Every household did everything. Farming did not create the job. Farming created the surplus. But somebody had to count it. Around 3,300 BC in southern Iraq, a city called Uruk swelled to tens of thousands of people, the largest thing humans had ever built. In 1928, a German team led by Julius Jordan started pulling clay tablets out of it, thousands of them. Everyone assumed the first writing would be prayer, or poetry, or law. It was receipts, barley, beer, sheep, cloth, who received what, and how much. Roughly 9 of every 10 early tablets are accounting, and among them sits a document scholars call the Standard Professions List. It is not a story. It is about 120 titles ranked top to bottom. Leader, judge, priest, cook, potter, shepherd. Scribes copied that list for 1,000 years. Look at what that actually is. The first thing humans ever wrote down about each other was not their names. It was their functions. The job was not invented by work. The job was invented by writing. But writing does something else to a person. Around 3,200 years ago, in a desert valley in Egypt, there was a village called Deir el-Medina. roughly 70 houses inside a wall. The men living there carved the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings. They were paid in grain, fish, oil, and beer. And somebody wrote down whether they showed up. Thousands of inscribed pottery shards survive, studied by the Egyptologist Jaroslav Cerny. Attendance records. Reasons for absence. This man is off because he is brewing beer, because he is building his house, because a scorpion stung him, because his mother died. That is a timesheet, 32 centuries old. Then, in the 29th year of Ramesses III, the rations came late. The workmen walked off the tombs, sat down at a mortuary temple, and refused to move until they were fed. The first recorded strike in history. It looks like a breakdown. It is actually the proof. The moment the job exists, so does the argument about it. But nobody yet owned your hours. In 1355, in a northern French town called Arrêt-sur-la-Lys, the townspeople asked the royal governor for permission to build a bell tower. Not for the church already had bells. These bells would ring for the cloth trade, for the hours of work. Across that same century, mechanical clocks spread from town to town. Cologne, Florence, Ghent. And here's the strange part. The church bell told you what to pray. The work bell told you what you owed. Before the bell, you worked until the task was done. A shoe, a field, a wall. Time was shaped like the job. After the bell, the job was shaped like time. Start at this hour. Stop at that hour. What happens in between is sold. That is the real invention, not the machine. The idea that an hour of your life can be bought. But it was still your hour, in your town, at your own bench. In 1771, an English wigmaker turned inventor named Richard Arkwright built a mill beside a stream in Cromford, Derbyshire. He did not invent spinning, he barely invented the machine. What Arkwright invented was the shift. The mill ran on water. Water does not sleep, so the mill did not sleep. 2 crews, 12 hours each, day and night, all year. At its height, Cromford employed around 800 people. Many were children, some were 7 years old. The historian Edward Thompson wrote about this in 1967. He showed how the fines worked. Late at the gate, you lose pay. Talk, you lose pay. Whistle, you lose pay. Look out a window, you lose pay. So the factory did not only buy your labor, it bought your attention, your posture, your voice. Before Cromford, work happened in a home. After Cromford, home is where you go when work has finished with you. But it gets stranger. In 1939, the United States Department of Labor published a book called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. It listed roughly 17,500 distinct jobs. Read a page of it. Not farmer, chick sexer, egg candler, bobbin boy, hand candy dipper. Each one with a definition, a code, a place in a taxonomy. This is what we do to Beetles. By 1939, we were doing it to ourselves. Because the job had stopped being something you did. It had become something you were. On a form, in a filing cabinet, in an office you would never visit. Ask a stranger who they are. They tell you what they do. Every time. In almost every country on Earth. 17,000 answers to the question, what are you? But here is where it turns. In 1930, the economist John Maynard Keynes wrote an essay about his grandchildren. He looked at rising productivity and did the arithmetic. He predicted that by around 2030, we would work 15 hours a week. His arithmetic was right. Output per worker rose exactly as he expected. Higher, in fact. The 15 hours never arrived. In 2013, the anthropologist David Graeber published a short essay asking why. His answer was that the hours did not disappear. They filled up. In 2015, a British polling firm asked working adults a direct question. Does your job make a meaningful contribution to the world? 37% said no. Not, I dislike it. Not, I am underpaid. No meaning at all. More than a third. 17 hours a week in the Kalahari, 40 in London, and a third of London is not sure why. But the real invention was never the work. The real invention was the slot. Göbekli Tepe proves people will haul 10-ton stones with no wage at all. The Kalahari proves survival never required 40 hours. Çatalhöyük proves farming alone does not do it. Uruk did something else. Uruk wrote a list and put people inside it. A task is what your hands do. A job is a container that exists before you and after you. It has a name. You step into it. You are described by it. And when you leave, It stays there, waiting for the next person. We did not invent work. We inherited work. We invented the box that work goes in. Then we climbed inside. It is a receipt. It is a title. It is a bell. It is a shift. It is a code in a dictionary. It is a way to make a human being countable. It is how 40,000 strangers feed each other without ever learning each other's names. It is how a tomb gets carved. It is how a city stands. And it is how someone asks who you are and you answer with a noun. Right now, roughly 3.5 billion people are standing inside one of these boxes. It is the largest coordinated act in the history of life on this planet. It works. It fed you today. Nothing else has ever fed this many. But nothing about it is natural. It is about 5,000 years old. Our species is 300,000. Which means for 98% of our time here, a human being woke up as nobody in particular, went to find food, and came back. You're standing in a field, the sun is barely up, the grass is wet against your legs, and now somebody is telling you what to do today.